General Hospital spoilers for Friday, May 9th. Predictions. Dante Falconeri remains steadfast in his conviction that Jason Morgan must answer for his son's reckless actions. The tension between the two fathers escalates to a near-breaking point, threatening to ignite a fierce showdown that will leave the Port Charles community reeling. As Dante presses his case, insisting that Jason take responsibility for Danny Morgan's recent misstep, a dangerous incident that almost cost young Rocco Falconeri his life, their shared sense of paternal pride becomes both their weapon and their weakness. In this first part of our deep dive, we'll explore Dante's unwavering pursuit of justice, Jason's internal battle between loyalty and honor, and the ripple effects that threaten to tear apart alliances and friendships across town. Dante's crusade against Jason begins in the precinct, where he brings up the harrowing details of Rocco's near-fatal encounter. The image of Rocco gasping for breath after a brush with death at the docks fuels Dante's righteous fury. He can barely contain himself as he recounts how Danny, in a moment of impulsive bravado, endangered an innocent child. For Dante, whose own experience with loss has hardened his resolve, this is more than a father's frustration, it's a moral imperative. He believes that letting Jason off the hook would send the wrong message, not only to Danny but to every citizen of Port Charles who looks to the law for protection. With each pointed question and pointed finger, Dante challenges Jason's code of silence, demanding accountability that would set a precedent for the entire Morgan clan. Jason, however, is a man torn. His loyalty to Danny is unyielding, the blood bond between father and son as strong as the river that cuts through Port Charles. He remembers Danny as a boy full of promise, eager to prove himself worthy of his father's legacy. Yet Dante's accusations strike at Jason's deepest insecurities. Is he a good father? Has his absence in Danny's life driven his son toward reckless behavior? As Dante's words pierce his stoic exterior, Jason's mind flashes back to moments of guilt, times when he chose the code of the mob over bedtime stories, when he trained Danny in survival tactics rather than nurtured his softer side. Now those choices stand between him and the respect of his fellow lawmen. The clash is inevitable. Two proud fathers, each convinced of their own righteousness, on a collision course that could shatter the fragile peace in Port Charles. Their confrontation is set against the backdrop of the Corinthos mansion, where news travels fast and alliances shift like quicksand. Sonny Corinthos, ever the strategist, watches from the shadows as the two men he counts on, his enforcer Jason and his son Dante, edge toward a blow-up that could undermine his control over both his family and his organization. Sonny's influence looms large. He knows that any rift between Jason and Dante will weaken the very foundations of his empire. As whispers of a potential brawl spread, the city holds its collective breath. Will these two fathers succumb to their pride, or will Sonny's intervention steer them back from the brink? Meanwhile, Portia Robinson finds herself ensnared in a web of betrayal and blackmail that threatens to drag her back into the darkness she fought so hard to escape. The whispers of an impending arrest weigh heavily on her, each knock on the door a reminder that her past misdeeds may finally catch up with her. Portia, once the picture of grace under pressure, now writhes in paranoia, knowing someone close to her has sold her out. The revelation of betrayal cuts deepest when she learns that Brad Cooper, her former confidant, has been turning over evidence to Drew Kane, the man orchestrating her downfall. Brad, motivated by the promise of a fresh start and a suitcase full of cash, is prepared to abandon Portia to her fate and flee Port Charles forever. Portia's desperation intensifies as she scrambles to uncover the extent of Brad's treachery. She retraces their conversations, searches through encrypted messages, and even confronts him face to face, but Brad's eyes betray nothing but cold resolve. The betrayal is crushing. Brad has exposed Portia's involvement in procuring ketamine for an illicit party, implicating her in Drew's broader scheme of manipulating Portia into psychological unraveling. Drew's machinations are cruelly precise. He wants Portia behind bars not only to eliminate her as a threat, but also to send a chilling message to anyone who dares cross him. Portia's fight is no longer just for her freedom, it's for her very identity. With every piece of evidence stacked against her, she must decide whether to attempt a daring escape, strike a deal, or rally her allies to prove her innocence. Amidst this turmoil, Willow Corinthos stands at a crossroads of her own. Determined to protect her mother, Nina Reeves, from the fallout of Drew Cain's scandal, Willow begins to piece together fragments of evidence hinting at Nina's involvement. Late nights spent poring over security footage, interrupted phone calls, and cryptic ledgers all point to a web of deceit spun far tighter than Willow first imagined. Yet the evidence remains circumstantial. Drew's fingerprints are on every document, his threats woven into every conversation. As Willow gathers photos of Nina at clandestine meetings and old receipts for offshore accounts, she grapples with doubt. Is her mother truly complicit, or is she another pawn in Drew's ruthless game? Willow's emotional journey unfolds in a series of clandestine stakeouts, lurking outside Nina's penthouse, tailing her through the rain-slicked streets of Port Charles, and eavesdropping on hushed conversations in the Metro Court's dimly lit corridors. Each discovery chips away at her faith in Nina, and with every late-night revelation, Willow feels the ground shift beneath her feet. The bond between mother and daughter, once a sanctuary, becomes a battleground. Willow is torn between her instinct to defend her mother at all costs and her responsibility to expose the truth. As she closes in on the final piece of the puzzle, a ledger connecting Nina directly to Drew's illicit operations, Willow fears that the proof she uncovers will shatter her family beyond repair. In the end, she may find herself standing alone, forced to decide whether to confront Drew publicly and risk incriminating Nina, or to bury the evidence and live with the weight of her silence. Part 2 carries us deeper into the chaos, where loyalties are tested, alliances crumble, and the very soul of Port Charles hangs in the balance. Sonny Corinthos, ever the patriarch, wrestles with the consequences of letting Jason and Dante settle their feud in his territory. He cannot afford to let his star enforcer and his beloved son tear each other apart. The cost would be immeasurable. With the city's underworld on notice, Sonny must act swiftly to broker a truce, and he is not above employing intimidation, persuasion, or outright threats to restore order. His intervention will expose fractures in his family's loyalty and reveal the lengths he is willing to go to protect his empire. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Baldwin, known to friends as Liz, quietly embarks on her own crusade. Haunted by the enigmatic behavior of Jordan Ashford, she senses that something sinister lurks beneath Jordan's composed exterior. After her attempts to coax information from Isaiah Falconeri hit a dead end, Liz turns to her detective instincts, digging through old case files, tracking Jordan's movements, and reaching out to sources in the police department. Each clue she uncovers paints a darker portrait of Jordan's possible involvement in Drew Cain's schemes. Is Jordan merely a pawn, or is she Drew's conspirator, leveraging her position at the Peace PD to shield his operations? Liz's investigation takes her into the city's underbelly, where she encounters informants, corrupt officers, and the shadowy figures who thrive on secrets. Her resolve is ironclad, but as she delves deeper, she risks exposing herself to the very danger she's trying to prevent. In the opulent halls of the Quartermaine mansion, Tracy Quartermaine faces a scandal of her own. Wrongly accused by Drew Cain of conspiring in his misdeeds, Tracy finds her reputation and her legal standing in jeopardy. The accusation is as baseless as it is malicious, yet the mere suggestion of her involvement sends shockwaves through the community. Tracy, who has built her life on power, influence, and unassailable social standing, refuses to be railroaded by Drew's lies. She assembles her legal dream team, combs through banking records, subpoenas witnesses, and prepares to sue Drew for defamation. But as the courtroom drama unfolds, Tracy confronts a deeper truth. her own hubris has blinded her to vulnerabilities. The battle for her name becomes a crucible, forcing her to reevaluate her relationships with her family, her board members, and even those she once considered loyal allies. As the week reaches its climax, Port Charles braces for a catastrophe that will leave no one untouched. Reports of a sudden explosion at a downtown warehouse send shockwaves through the city. The blast rips through concrete and steel, shattering windows and sending debris raining down on unsuspecting bystanders. Initial chaos ensues as sirens wail and emergency crews race to the scene. Among the injured is Jack Brennan, his body slumped against a crumpled police cruiser, blood trickling from a gunshot wound to his shoulder. Reports surface almost immediately that Sonny Corinthos may be the man who pulled the trigger, an act of retribution for Jack's attempt to recruit Jocelyn Jacks into the covert world of WSB agents. If true, the fallout will be monumental. Law enforcement will be forced to choose sides, alliances will fracture, and the delicate balance of power in Port Charles will shatter. In the aftermath of the explosion, the city plunges into mourning and suspicion. Sonny denies involvement, claiming he was thousands of miles away at the time, yet witnesses place him at the scene. Dante, torn between his duty as an officer and his filial loyalty, leads the investigation, determined to uncover the truth. Jason, too, finds himself pulled into the fray, torn between protecting Sonny and upholding justice. As forensic teams sift through the rubble and ballistics reports confirm the caliber of the bullet, every lead points back to the Corinthos name. Meanwhile, Jocelyn, reeling from the betrayal and violence that has engulfed her world, questions her choices and the cost of working in the shadows. Her path forward is uncertain. The only thing she knows for sure is that Port Charles will never be the same. Sonny's world steadily darkened in the aftermath of the warehouse explosion, the air thick with suspicion and fear. News of Jack Brennan's shooting spread through Port Charles like wildfire, each whispered rumor adding fuel to the flames. As the city held its breath, Sonny found himself cornered by questions he could not avoid. His carefully constructed alibi, a private flight overseas to conduct family business, crumbled under the weight of eyewitness accounts, placing him near the blast. Even his most loyal lieutenants began to doubt, their unwavering confidence shaken by the possibility that their boss had ordered a hit on a beloved local hero. In the Grand Corinthos drawing room, Sonny paced before the ornate fireplace, the flickering flames casting elongated shadows across the marble floors. At his side, Jason watched with solemn intensity. Though bound by loyalty and love, Jason's conscience ached for Dante, who now led the official investigation into Jack's shooting. The code of silence that governed their underworld dealings clashed violently with Jason's duties as a former law enforcement officer. Every time the phones buzzed with news updates or the walls shook from distant sirens, Jason felt the tension coil tighter in his chest. He knew that any misstep could alienate him from Dante, from Sonny, or from both, and the thought of fracturing his surrogate family filled him with dread. Meanwhile, Dante struggled to separate personal allegiance from professional obligation. Late nights spent poring over ballistic reports and security footage saw him haunted by the faces of two men he loved like brothers. Could Sonny really be capable of such an act? Was Jason hiding the truth to protect the Corinthos legacy? Dante's every thought drifted back to that moment of horror when Jack's uniformed figure crumpled at the edge of the warehouse's shattered loading bay. He replayed the sound of the gunshot, the crack that shattered the night, and vowed to find justice for his fallen comrade. As the lead detective on the case, Dante pulled in every favor at PCPD, gathering forensic evidence, interviewing witnesses, and unearthing digital trails. His investigation drew him into the darkest corners of power in Port Charles, revealing secrets that threatened to consume him. Amid the familial strife, Liz Baldwin pressed forward with her probe into Jordan Ashford's shadowy dealings. Determined to expose the truth, she assembled a dossier of Jordan's financial transactions, communications logs, and personnel records from the police department. Clutching printouts at the Metro Court, Liz confronted Isaiah in a tense hallway exchange. His eyes flickered with concern, but he offered no answers, only a resigned shake of the head. Undeterred, Liz turned to independent sources, an informant deep within the PCPD, who whispered of off-the-books surveillance runs and clandestine meetings between Jordan and Mr. Kane. Every revelation painted Jordan not as a well-meaning officer, but as a willing accomplice in Drew's campaign of control and blackmail. Liz's moral compass propelled her forward, though with each piece of evidence her world felt more uncertain. If Jordan was complicit, what lengths would she go to protect herself, and what danger would Liz place herself in by uncovering the truth? Tracy Quartermaine, unbowed by Drew's false allegations, prepared for her day in court with characteristic flair. Surrounded by her legal team in the Quartermaine conference room, she issued orders with imperious precision, insisting on every detail from witness testimony to media strategy. But beneath the veneer of confidence, Tracy wrestled with bitterness. To be accused of wrongdoing, even falsely, struck at the core of her identity. She pondered the lengths to which Drew would go to undermine his adversaries, and realized that defeating him legally might not be enough. Tracy began to research Drew's background, hoping to find a chink in his armor, a moment of corruption or betrayal that could be used to discredit him entirely. As subpoenas flew and depositions neared, Tracy steeled herself for a battle that would test not only her legal acumen, but her resilience of spirit. Brad Cooper, now a man on the run, found himself in a small coastal town south of Port Charles, bracing for the fallout of his betrayal. The money Drew had offered had bought his silence, but not his peace. Each day, Brad woke to nightmares, visions of Portia's anguished face, as she realized she'd been sold out. He scanned the local news obsessively, half hoping for a headline that proved Drew's plan had failed, half dreading confirmation that Portia's freedom was slipping away. Guilt gnawed at him, and whispers of redemption echoed in his mind. Should he risk returning to Port Charles, confessing everything, and facing the wrath of both his friends and the law? Or should he remain hidden, consumed by regret but safe from Drew's wrath? The choice tortured him, every passing hour a reminder that betrayal leaves no easy path to redemption. Back in the city, Portia Robinson navigated the labyrinth of legal peril with a fierce determination. Her once trusted support network felt like quicksand, and she clung to the allies she could still count on. Mac and Felicia Scorpio offered shelter and counsel, using their media connections to cast doubt on the allegations against her. Meanwhile, Portia's own investigative instincts led her to uncover inconsistencies in Brad's statements to the police, clues that suggested he'd been coerced rather than a willing traitor. Late nights in the Horizon recording booth transformed into clandestine strategy sessions, where Portia and Felicia plotted to gather counter-evidence, surveillance footage proving the timing of Drew's meetings with Brad, financial records showing unexplained transfers from Drew to Cooper. With each new discovery, Portia regained a fragment of her confidence, and the fire in her eyes burned brighter. In the midst of legal and moral battles, Willow Corinthos faced the looming verdict of her own struggle. The final piece of damning evidence against Nina lay in the ledger she had risked everything to obtain, pages that tied Nina's company to Drew's black market operations. Yet as Willow prepared to expose her mother, doubt crept in like tendrils of mist. Could she destroy her own family's name with the truth? Would revealing Nina's complicity be an act of justice, or a betrayal that would leave her family irreparably broken? On a storm-lashed night, she confronted Nina in the hushed grandeur of the Reeves penthouse. Under rain-streaked windows, Willow laid out the evidence, her voice trembling between accusation and plea. Nina's reaction, shock melting into sorrow, cut Willow to the core. The revelation fractured their bond, forcing Willow to choose between protecting her mother or upholding her conscience. In that moment, The daughter who once idolized her mother became a judge, weighing loyalty against justice. As the courtroom drama unfolded and the police investigation deepened, the pieces of Port Charles's sprawling narrative began to converge. Dante, poring through evidence, identified the bullet that struck Jack as the same rare caliber Sonny's personal guards used, a detail that cornered Sonny more tightly than any testimony. Jason, torn between fatherly love and loyalty to Dante, faced a moment of reckoning. Would he stand by Sonny's side, or would he help Dante uphold the law he once swore to protect? In a clandestine meeting beneath the glow of a street lamp, Jason and Dante exchanged words heavy with unspoken emotion. The future of their brotherhood and the fate of Sonny Corinthos hung in the balance. Meanwhile, Liz Baldwin presented her dossier to the police commissioner, exposing Jordan Ashford's off-the-books activities. The fallout was immediate. Jordan was placed on administrative leave, her badge and authority stripped away pending an internal affairs investigation. Jordan's fall from grace rippled through the department, igniting debates over loyalty and integrity. For Liz, the victory was bittersweet. She had uncovered the truth, but at the cost of fracturing a friendship she once prized. Tracy's courtroom showdown with Drew was a spectacle of high-stakes legal theater. With steel in her voice and fire in her eyes, she tore apart his credibility, revealing his pattern of manipulation and blackmail. By calling Brad Cooper to the stand, surprising the courtroom with testimony that proved Brad had acted under duress, Tracy undercut Drew's entire case. The jury's verdict of not guilty for Tracy was met with a roar of relief from her supporters. Yet as she departed the courtroom, triumphant, she knew the war was far from over. Drew would retreat only to strike back harder, and Tracy's victory would be but a brief respite in an ongoing battle. Sonny, now under intense scrutiny, leveraged every resource at his disposal to evade indictment. He orchestrated a media offensive through his front companies, planting stories that painted Jack's shooting as the act of a lone gunman with no ties to the Corinthos family. He summoned favors from politicians and judges, using his network of influence to muddy the waters. But every move risked exposing him further, and every ally forced to choose sides found themselves staring into a moral abyss. The more Sonny tried to control the narrative, the more uncontrollable it became. The saga reached its crescendo one rain-soaked evening on the docks of Port Charles. Jason intercepted Dante there, both men drenched and exhaustion etched on their faces. Between them lay a battered duffel bag containing the final pieces of evidence that could either exonerate Sonny or seal his fate. Lightning split the sky as they confronted each other, words tumbling out in a torrent of blame, love, and unspoken fears. Jason's voice cracked as he confessed the truth. He had helped Sonny plant misleading evidence to protect the family business. Dante's world shattered as he realized that his brother had betrayed his sworn duty to the law. In that flash of revelation, the bond forged in blood and loyalty teetered on the edge of ruin. Yet in the same moment, a shared understanding flickered between them. Family, for better or for worse, had always been their anchor. As thunder rolled across the river, Jason offered Dante a choice. They could turn the evidence over to the police, exposing Sonny once and for all, or they could bury it together, preserving the fragile unity that had kept the Corinthos and Morgan clans strong. The decision would define not just their futures, but the soul of Port Charles itself. The choice remained suspended in the air, heavy with consequence. Would justice prevail over loyalty? Could the bonds of brotherhood survive such a betrayal? As the rain washed over them, Jason and Dante stood at the crossroads of their lives, the fate of an empire, and the fragile hearts caught in its grip, hanging in the balance. In this city where secrets are currency and trust is a luxury, only one truth remained. In Port Charles, no one ever truly walks away unscathed.